Welcome everybody back to New Year's and Happy New Year, long holiday. So I will call this meeting of the board curriculum to order. The committee would like to welcome the audience, and viewers may watch live board committee meetings online at tcaps.net/board. Recorded meetings may be viewed on demand at the same address. So we'll go to public comment. Any public commenters? No public commenters out there. Okay, thought we'd start different this year here at the curriculum committee. Okay, we'll go on to procedural items. So we are at the draft meeting minutes portion of the agenda. Are there any changes to those draft meeting minutes? No, hearing no changes, the minutes will remain as posted. Go right into district course catalog updates, and I will defer to Ms. Houghton.
Sure. So we have two things on our memo this month for course catalog updates. We have a few updates to our current course catalog. Some of those are, again, those online classes that we are adding in as we've kind of learned and dabble into that world. And then the other thing that we have on the memo too is our course catalog for next year. So our registration and our course sign up for students at the secondary, specifically the high schools, will start actually right after they turn over semesters. And so you'll see some new courses on there for the 25-26 school year. On that memo as well. Let's see, a few that I'll highlight for you on that course catalog. And again, these are all if we have enough enrollment for the courses to run. I know that there's a social studies elective that they pitched. It's called America at War. It's going to explore the history of the United States through the lens of its involvement in major wars and conflicts. Students would analyze the causes, conduct, and consequences of these wars and examine the impact on America's society, politics, and culture. Something that some of our social studies departments are interested in. There's been some student initial interest in that as well. AP Research, which is sort of that second part to AP Seminar that was put in the course catalog last year. We're really hoping we are going to run that at both the high schools this next year. And so kids will, it'll be 11th and 12th grade students who have learned how to take current research and information and put together conclusions. They would actually go and do a full project on that, is what that would look like for that. That's a College Board course. As far as just highlighting some new ones for next year, a few name changes as well in there. So.
Got it. Yeah, the name changes down below are just like the West Senior High Weights and Conditioning changed to just Titan Performance Center, and that's just a change in the catalog to make it.
Yep, no change in the course description. It was a preference by a teacher and some students and things to make that more branded towards the school. So
got it. Okay, perfect. So we will move, if there's no other questions, we'll just move those to consent for the regular board meeting. Beth, do you have any questions or?
The applied piano, is that?
I think that's an NMC.
It's a dual enrollment course at NMC.
Okay.
Yeah, some of these are NMC courses as well that were either new at NMC or we've never had students who were interested in them. So that's what some of those courses are too. Yep.
Cool. All right, so we'll move on to Sex Education Advisory Board recommendations, and I will defer to Ms. Kay.
Yes. So in order to be in line with the bylaws, the Sex Education Advisory Board will recommend 2 co-chairs from its members. These co-chairs will lead the Sex Education Advisory Board for the following year and be formally appointed at the TCAPS Board of Education's annual organizational meeting in January, with the intent for those co-chairs to serve a 2-year term. So for the 24-25 school year, Ann McGurn will be in his 2nd year of his term as co-chair, and the Sex Education Advisory Board recommends that the Board of Education appoint Carrie Ullery Smith, as the 2nd co-chair. So administration recommends that the Board Curriculum Committee support the Sex Education Advisory Board's recommendation and advance this item to the full board for approval on January 13th, 2025.
I have a few concerns about that. Ian McGurn obviously is a good choice. Carrie is an employee of Planned Parenthood, and Planned Parenthood has some very well-known views that are very public. Are there not other less lightning rod possible people that would chair that committee? I don't know who else is on your committee.
I think we, so when the sex ed, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but
that's
the,
okay.
No, do you?
when Dan has presented and how the sex ed committee, advisory board picks their board members, they go through a very specific process and how they do that and who applies to do that. And then if they have so many, they randomly would draw, like he said before. I think in this case, it's the advisory board is recommending these two. I don't know. They are the ones that have served on, and I'm sure on the other side, we have very conservative members that maybe have opposite views of someone that,
I would go for a more moderate representation, because I think that there's enough people that would opt out. I don't want to encourage opting out of the course. And so I think a moderate approach would be a good idea in that line.
and I think, I think that it is up to the advisory board as to who they want to, serve and go through their procedures, policies and procedures as to how they appoint.
Yeah, my understanding is that the advisory board recommends, like for instance, Carrie, and then it comes to the full board as far as that approval goes. So as far as what curriculum does in this step is that we bring forward who their appointment was. And then from there, if I'm not mistaken, right, then the full board would approve that at the next meeting.
I understand that, but I'm just going on record as saying that I have concerns about that.
Gotcha.
I had the, and I apologize for being late, this one snuck up on me, I'm so sorry. I had the pleasure of serving on the Sex Education Advisory Board prior to becoming a board member. And Carrie is an excellent member of that advisory board. She's very knowledgeable, she's very fair. She is for putting out the most recent, most scientific information there is out there. She's a big proponent of that. And I do want to uplift that there are conservative members on that advisory board who, if they voted her in, then they obviously appreciated her potential leadership as well. There are parents on there, there are clergy on there, there are physicians on there. So if she becomes recommended, I have a lot of faith in that, trust.
And I can appreciate your concern, and again, it's a parent's choice or the child's choice to opt out of sex ed, the curriculum. And so I think, in this case, I have to stand by the advisory board and their recommendations and, and again, we can add it to the agenda on consent, and if you want to pull it off for discussion.
I understand.
I think that, as long as you get a second at the board level, that we can pull it off for discussion. Is that right, John?
No, actually, I think anyone can pull anything off from consent.
Oh, okay.
Unless we go to discussion.
I think you're right, actually.
It
Okay.
doesn't take a second. And so I just wanted to register that concern because I think it's a valid concern.
Okay.
Just like if it were somebody that was totally conservative in a very tight framework, I would be concerned about that person too, chairing.
But I think that that's the
Co-chairing.
beauty, and again, difference of opinion, but that's the beauty of having that advisory is they're able to have a very diverse discussion, and you sort of want those diverse views so that more of the whole population's represented. Because we do have very conservative as well as very, liberal views that are represented by our parents and our kids, and so, collectively they make and advise on what the sex ed advisory board puts out. So I appreciate that diverse conversation.
Right, I'm keeping it diverse, is what my interest is.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, well, we'll move it to consent for the January 13th meeting, and we'll, if you would like to pull it off, we can do it then. Does that sound okay? Okay, all right, so we will move on to field trip requests, so Ms. Houghton.
Yes, this is not a new field trip, it's just an adjustment to one that was already approved a year ago by the board. It's a field trip to Peru. Originally, it was put forth by a West Senior High teacher with only West Senior High students. Since they've I don't think she quite has the interest that she wanted, and I think there are some students at Central High School who are interested in it going, and so she approached me and said, hey, can we expand this field trip opportunity? And absolutely is the answer. So this is just an adjustment to a previous submitted field trip request, knowing that we are adding the opportunity for 4 to 5 Central students to join this trip.
Perfect, that makes great sense. So, good. Any questions on that? No? Okay, we'll add that right to the consent. So, okay, moving on to informational items. First item is the board curriculum learning series and some curriculum updates. So, Jesse and Dan and Brittany.
Sure. Dan and I are like having a clicking word. Oh, okay. There we go. Okay, we got
Clicking, my clicker's down.
it. Okay, got it.
I'm not getting a clicking word there.
Good answer, Dan. So one of the things we just wanted to show you guys and share with you is this is a slide of something that Dan and Brittany and I have used a lot this year with our curriculum leaders and our building principals. This comes out of educational research as we're focusing on our tier 1 instruction, right? The instruction that happens the majority of time in all of our classrooms across all of our buildings. What are the success factors that we're looking for? And this slide outlines those. We have other in a presentation, where did the data come from? Where's the research? What's the effect size that Hattie cites on each of these? But we just wanted to sort of draw your attention to these are the 4 that we have really framed a lot of our PD and work around this year. And really that first one, that high quality instructional materials, right? Making sure that we get materials in our teachers' hands that have research behind them, that have intentionality behind them, that have that coherence, K-12 for our teachers. The second one, using our assessments, and as you'll see in the next couple months, we're going to bring some data from our students to the board and then talk about what do we do with that data, right? Similar to when we had our middle school and high schools principals here talking about how are we using our data to better support kids, to find kids that might be, struggling a little bit, and how do we support them and get them back on track. The teacher credibility piece is really defined as students knowing that individual in the classroom cares about them, has faith in them, believes in them, but also is the expert in their craft, and that if I do what the teacher is asking me to do, I know my skills will progress and I will grow. And then the last one, engaging instruction, is how do we chunk different things? How do we use explicit instruction? What are those different factors we use in the classroom to ensure that we're creating the most engaging environment possible for our students to learn. So different factors of these come up at different points, but I thought it would be important to at least show this to you guys so that in case you hear someone talk about it, it is something that kind of headlines every time we bring our curriculum or building principles together.
Yeah, it definitely is a guide for us to stay focused on tier 1 instruction, knowing that the focus on tier 1 instruction moves the needle quicker than anything else we do in education. And it's hard, like tier 1 instruction is one of the biggest challenges that we have, just as far as the differentiation, teaching to every learner. But we definitely want to keep that our focus as far as, obviously part of the C19.
Yep. So some of the stuff you're going to see today are some really kind of in 1 and 2 branches for work we've been doing this year.
So I want to direct your attention to the Venn diagram you see at that bottom right-hand corner, which is just a really nice visual representation that really showcases the district's 3-year plan from an elementary standpoint and building that educator coherence around the what, the why, and the how as we think about providing high-quality literacy instruction to our elementary students. So in the 23-24 school year, the district focused on building awareness and understanding in that how of the art of instruction through the explicit instruction framework. And during that year-long professional development sequence, the district also engaged in a year-long curriculum adoption process that involved multiple stakeholder groups in the district that resulted in the selection of CKLA for the new Tier 1 curriculum. And then that moves us into this year, 24-25 school year, where the district has really focused on increasing understanding and building knowledge and capacity around the science of reading through a school-based partnership with a nationally recognized nonprofit organization called the Reading League, who has provided professional development to all junior kindergarten through 5th grade staff. And alongside that, we have a group of CKLA early adopter teachers who are piloting CKLA and providing feedback and receiving implementation support from Amplify, which is really gonna set the stage nicely moving into the 25-26 school year next year as we move into district-wide CKLA implementation.
That was my question. When does it go full? So next year?
Yes.
Okay.
We are looking to try and get materials in teachers' hands at the end of this year and provide optional professional development going into the summer for those who are wanting to also do a little bit more of that early adopter kind of structure. And then it will move into that full implementation officially in the fall of 25.
And I don't know if this is appropriate to even ask right now, but how is the pilot, how are the teachers responding to the pilot program just compared to, I know there was such disappointment in our
Journeys.
journeys. Just curious if any feedback that you've gotten from like the pilot program is.
Yes, we've had quite a positive, like a very well received, I think, attitude in terms of implementing CKLA. Very positive in terms of the transitions from the previous curricular resource into CKLA. And we have a lot of other teachers who are not a part of the early adopter that wishes they certainly were. And they're just kind of chomping at the bit, waiting to be able to do that in the fall.
Good.
Yes.
Good. It'll be interesting to kind of see what happens with just even the data, just because of we've seen such gaps in our
Yes.
curriculum with journeys, and it's.
Yeah, we were
been a long
interested
time.
just in our winter, just to see any impact. Usually with ELA, it takes a couple years as far as filling in those holes go, but it'd be interesting just to look at our winter NWA, which we will be, to see if we can compare the
Comparing
two.
the two
Yeah.
groups, yeah. Because there was a thing where we were adding more the curriculum. There's a little bit of a shift in the curriculum that we were getting the updated curriculum
Yes.
because they were being a pilot.
Yeah, and the
So-
third edition will start next year. There won't be there'll be a little bit of third edition as we move forward once it comes out from CKLA, but they're going to a brand new edition starting next year, and we'll have that new edition for all teachers.
I have a question. Is there any remedial work for the kids that are not obviously a part of the new curriculum that are still lagging behind as readers?
Yeah, so with Journeys, what we've done over the years, as we noticed these holes develop in the curriculum, we started filling those in with other programming, right, to help develop that fluency piece of reading or comprehension, the phonics, phonemic awareness, those as we continue to go. That's what we're trying to avoid, right? If we're gonna spend, Journeys, I think was 1.2 million, right? I was part of that adoption when I was at Westwoods. And within a couple of years, there was a few things that happened as far as when we rolled that out that we learned from to make the rollout for CKLA much better. But as far as when we spend that kind of money on a curriculum, the last thing we want to do in 2 years is start to buy more materials or teacher-paid teachers to start to supplement what we already have. So yes, right now Journeys is in year 8, right? And it's been supplemented immensely throughout the years. And that's what we want to avoid with CKLA.
But I would just say that, obviously if a student is lagging behind, that's where our
Yeah.
tier 2 and tier 3 do come into play, right? So we have those tier 2 interventions. And then if kids aren't responding to that, that's when we're starting to think about, do they need to be referred for special education evaluation to see if they need more intense services?
I'll also add that the professional development provided by the Reading League has been creating more consistency in terms of remediating through instructional strategies versus the purchase of additional curriculum. And so that's been a really nice way to build a little bit more consistency between those who are doing the CKLA pilot and those who are still implementing Journeys as well, without having to go and pull from different resources to create more of those kind of unintentional gaps for students.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of efforts too in the community right now to try and support young kids in preparation of kindergarten. You know, and I don't know if we tie into any of that as well. You know, Dolly Parton is the big one, but there's backpacks, one as well, that are out there and being heavily promoted. My question to some of those groups is, what do? You present books to young kids, but if a parent can't read, it's gonna be more difficult to actually transfer that program's benefit to the younger kid. You know, so what do we do for the parents that can't read as well, or don't read proficiently? And there are some folks along those lines.
CKLA is being used in our junior kindergarten classrooms currently.
Yeah.
So they're actually a year ahead.
Well, I'm watching the phonics being used, and it's cool, you know, and the kids are engaged, and I like that. At least what I'm seeing at Blair, they're engaged.
And I would say our preschool, whether it's Head Start or GSRP or tuition-based preschool within TCAPS, they have a dedicated curriculum that incorporates, you know, reading and math. And so there's lots of different things that are happening at the preschool level as well.
Thank you.
And for our elementary math update, as far as instructionally, what they've been working on this year is the idea of that fact fluency practice and kind of emphasizing that in our professional development, and also as we move forward in second semester with our our TCR time and PLC time. So Aaron Sorensen, who leads our elementary math department, has been working with our coaches as well as the elementary math team to develop that professional development so they can take that information, disseminate it to staff during those professional development times. The second thing is to let you know, for next year, the publisher of our math expressions is going to change from HMH to Heinemann. So it doesn't actually change as far as it's not new curriculum per se, but if you start to hear that, and I've never heard of Heinemann math before, so we don't necessarily have to go through a formal approval process. This happens sometimes when you're in a multi-year contract with publishers. We have it changed over, and in doing so, that's eventually going to change over our online platform. So the online platform, as far as we know right now, is lagging a little bit. That's not ideal. The materials are similar enough where Think Central can still be used, but we hope that by semester it does turn over to that Flight platform. And when it does that, I think we'll have a group, probably our math team, will early adopt that just to make sure we get all the kinks worked out and then go full into the online platform for 26, 27.
And that Heinemann is like a new publisher? Is that what you call them?
Yeah, they sell it. These are big companies.
Yeah.
They're
So
not a
just,
new company though,
Yeah.
they just.
no,
They
okay.
purchased it from HMH.
Okay, keeping the curriculum the same,
Yes.
just like
What's interesting though is when those things happen is,
switching labels.
so HMH uses a certain online learning management system platform.
Okay,
So when they sell it, they don't sell that platform because they use that for all their other things. So the new publisher, when they take over that book, they begin to generally transform over to their own platform. And so that's what you see with some of these textbook companies, and that element of some of that shift.
okay. Got it. Okay.
And then we're gonna talk a little bit about some secondary curricular course review work we've been doing this year. No new curriculum for secondary that we're talking about, just want you guys to know how are we ensuring that what we're using and how we're using it is accurate as possible for transparency on our website, and also how our teachers aligned across all of our secondary buildings. So I did bring a little guest with me over here. Larissa Vanderzee is the teacher librarian from Central High School. She also serves the district as leading all of our ELA for 612 this year. So she oversees that specific core curricular area for us. And she's been part of this course review work and has seen some of that. So I wanted her to share her view on that, and also just talk a little bit about, she works with teachers across, she's been at all the secondaries now this year, visited and seen classrooms, and just how important it is for us to ensure that our teachers are coming together to collaborate at intentional, deliberate times around what are we teaching? How are we ensuring that kids are learning that? Hey, what are you doing over there? And how do we create those spaces in an intentional way in our district? So lots of words in this box. But this kind of gives you an overview of, we had the blueprints, which were the scope and sequence for all of our courses. Those are published online, right? But we hadn't really gone back in a few years and looked at those and said, are these accurate? Are these aligned with what is happening in the classrooms? Our staff changes, right? And people get new preps too at the secondary. It's not uncommon for, hey, I was teaching ELA 10 and now I'm teaching ELA 11. And how are we ensuring that I'm coming on and doing what the district would, want us to be doing? How am I aligned to my counterparts across town? So through our course review audits, and I'll turn it over to Hugh here in a second, we look at, okay, so what are the materials that we're using? How are we monitoring, which by that we mean, are kids being successful, right? Are we seeing the growth and the skills and the understanding that we would want? How do we know that? And then are our teachers engaged in the trainings, whether that be, local trainings or regional trainings, or even we've sent some teachers this year to some national and statewide conferences to grow some of their skills. Is that happening too? And where might we have gaps, and how might we address those as a course and a curricular team? So Larissa, I'll let you talk a little bit about maybe. Oh, there we go. This is the first time we've kind of gone about, like, what does it look like for us to review a grade level course, right? Could be for ELA, you guys are doing sixth grade? Sixth grade and ninth grade. So we get subs for the teachers that are teaching those courses. So we bring them here to Glen Loomis together. And right now we've done one full session. We've our second session planned, and we're hoping to do a third session. And you can sort of see in the boxes as to, hey, what are the tasks that we're doing at each of these sessions. But if you want to talk a little bit about.
I'll try to keep it condensed. So each course also had a different method as to who they asked to come. But the teachers that are involved in the course review are teachers that are currently teaching that subject matter. And at least for ELA, and this tends to be the case with the other departments as well, they have knowledge of what has come either before or what will come. And so it doesn't exist in a silo, like what they understand about how to go about it. And so we really didn't have, we weren't entirely sure like how this was gonna go. And then Jesse worked on a protocol, and then Brittany and I worked on another addition to that and how it would work. And it was, for all of them, I think, really useful just to get people together in a room from different sides of town who teach the same thing, and to understand a little bit about where the standards are being implemented. We started with that. We started with just all of the standards and, okay, well, where do we do these things? And then looking at how those intersect with our materials, the curriculum materials that we have. And then we thought, how do we do this so that it's not 100% curriculum materials bound? Because then we have my perspectives for, I think, another 6, so we wouldn't have to do, but in 3 years, we hope to have everything done, and then what do we have to do the whole thing over again in 6? We're like, well, we can look at it, but we don't want to go through the whole process, because a lot of what kids need to know at certain levels, that will not change. So our first session, we got, I think, a little bit further than we even thought we would with ELA. And a lot of it is finding gaps. Like, we did a gap analysis, which I know for ELA was really useful, because there are things that are happening at East Middle that maybe are not happening at West Middle. There are things that are happening at Central that are not happening at West. Not major things, because they're outside of the My Perspectives curriculum, but they're teacher brought materials that help with, for example, vocabulary skill development. In the My Perspectives, there's just not enough for the honors level kids to prep them for the SAT and for college level work. So they've had to supplement, and then we've done different things. And so we're trying to figure out, okay, well, what's the best, and what can we use, or can we use both of those? Same thing for grammar at the high school level. And then at the middle school level, it was really about text structures and how kids can start to understand how there are all these different types of writing. How can you, as a 6th grader, even figure out what that looks like? So that was useful for the instructors to hear from the other side of town, because we don't get enough time to talk to the people who teach the same stuff in the other building. And this is really good for that. And then from there, they can bring that information back to their buildings and their department leaders and say, hey, this is what we did, this is kind of where we're going. And then the goal for session 2 is to bring in the data that we have, with the idea that we are going to look at the assessments. And there's a lot of talk always of common assessments, and there are some people who operate from the philosophy that they should be exactly the same. There are more people who operate from the philosophy that the skills need to be the same, but we need to have some autonomy in what that looks like. And so that's the next level of this, is what does the data say we need to do differently, and how are we going to ensure that we're testing kids, not just in a summative way to say at the end, oh, well, we missed that, good luck, 10th grade. But where we can do a little bit more of that formatively within the year, so that then we can identify where some of those gaps are and then adjust using the materials that we have and any of the materials that we've shared. And I think the best thing, and I think teachers felt this way too, is that the goal of these 3 and the goal of this whole process is to have one document instead of 20 where you go and then you have a pathway. So if I know I'm an English teacher, because that's what I do, I go to the ELA bank on this document that has everything. And so it would, like, everybody would have access to that part. And then I could say, okay, I'm ELA, I have access to this. And I'm ELA 9, I'm going to go here. And I'm in unit 1, I'm going to go here. What are the writing assessments and how am I going to implement that? Then I can go here. So there are these threads, but it comes off of one, like, doc almost. And that is not really the case now. And there are a lot of instructors who, if they're new, they get a textbook, they get a teacher edition of a textbook with all of the pages earmarked. And then I'm gonna give you all of my materials, which is helpful, but if that doesn't work for me, then I have to try to figure out based on old blueprint material. And all of the stuff that I really need is on page 8 of those. And then some of the new material, like the new documents that we've been trying to shift so that it's less cluttered. So the goal is to have pathways that the teachers can easily access. And then some shared assessments so that we can work a little bit more to getting kids on both sides of town, like having a more equal and making sure that it's an equitable, for sure, experience for them. So that's the ultimate goal. And I think we can do it in 3 sessions with each grade. We're doing 2 right now, and we brought in, I asked 4 people. I asked 2 9th grade teachers and from West and 2 9th grade teachers from Central, so that we had a collection. And then the same for 6th grade. So we were split in a room, and it does make for a little bit of, okay, like, let's not be so loud because they're trying to talk. But we had more input there because we had a higher number of individuals. And I think that really helped the process. And there was a lot of conversation of, oh, that's awesome, we should be doing that here, which I think is good ultimately for the kids in those situations. And then ideally when we get done, because 9th grade, we started with 9th, by the time we then are looking at 8th, we will have the stuff done for 9th. So then when we're doing the 8th grade audit, we can say, okay, now this is really important because we know what we are focusing on in 9th grade. How do we need to work with the 8th grade, knowing what 7th is and knowing what 9th grade is, and where we need to kind of make sure that there are no gaps, like, so they get there and say, well, I don't know what a thesis is because we've always just called it a topic sentence or a main idea. And that kind of stuff you just don't think about until people start using language in a room together. And then we realize, oh, wait, I've been doing this for 24 years. And that's difficult for me to shift. So for a kid who's 14, that's tricky.
2 questions. One thing is, each class is different. So that, your 7th graders this year are not gonna be the same group,
right,
obviously. How adaptable is this for the variance that you're gonna see in kids coming in?
Highly. So we're looking at the infrastructure and making sure that teachers have access to the materials in a progression that will be the most beneficial. And then within that, we will have some the other goal is to have then these instructional pieces that are part of it that will help that situation. So I have a demographic of kids that are coming in lower than they were from the year before. So how can we then switch some of our teaching practices to bring them up to where they need to be?
Or higher.
Yeah, either way, yeah. Yeah.
Or it can be that they're both at the same level, but from a totally different background.
Yep.
And to appreciate that, not hammer one way, one truth, one light.
Well, and that's how this work helps that happen, because in the absence of having a very strong foundational base of what we want to accomplish, then as good of a teacher as you are struggling to figure out how to do that exact thing because you don't even know what you're supposed to be doing, and where you should go. And so if that knowledge is very firmly set, then there's all sorts of fluctuation that an individual instructor can do based on the individual needs of those kids at any point in the year.
And then is there any way that kids evaluate what they think they received? You know, and maybe that's just something we don't ask public school kids very much. But, you know, at college, you were always asked to evaluate your class and instruction. And I'm wondering what kind of feedback you're getting and whether some of that might be useful for the kids themselves.
I mean, most of, and you can like jump in here too, but my experience as being an instructor when I had my own classes, and I know this still happens in our building, is that that's a part of almost every instructor's year-end work. The kids do an evaluation, they are asked about methods, they are asked about pacing, they are asked about some things that maybe they thought they just didn't think worked well. So it is, I know if you are an evaluation, for sure you're doing that. Normally more than once, that's part of your evaluation cycle, is giving kids surveys about what's happening. Not just what they like and what they don't like about the material, but how it's being executed in the room. So teachers get a lot of feedback about that. And then administrators have that also.
Yeah, at both the high schools, and I think Larissa's been part of this, we've done staff meetings where we even like create, like, here's kind of a template for a survey you could do in your course. Sometimes teachers just are like, sweet, that will work for me. Sometimes they make a copy of it and tweak it because there's some specific things that they were working on that they're wondering, you know, what students felt about those. And every time we talk a lot about, like, they always get insight. It's always interesting to hear what, like, and Larissa's right, it's not always about the curricular program, but it's about little things like kids really appreciated that the teacher did it this way in this manner, or we're wanting more opportunities or help in this manner, and teachers are like, oh, I didn't even think about that, right? So, you know.
And small stuff like, I want a paper copy. I don't want to just look at it on.
Yeah.
I know somebody who's like
So this is right now, this is the first year, you know, this was something, you know, I'm new to my job, and I came in and I said, gosh, how are we ensuring that we're just checking in, even when we don't do a major curricular adoption like the CKLA at ELA, but how are we on a regular basis checking in and auditing those courses? So this year I kind of tasked each of our curricular leaders with, hey, pick a middle school and a high school course. Bring the teachers to the table and let's get going on this. Let's build a structure. The goal is, and I thought it was super ambitious, but I actually think it's achievable, is to build a 3-year cycle. So if you are a core area teacher, 6-12, anything that's required for all kids to take, we know that course is reviewed every 3 years. So you as a teacher have an opportunity to be part of that review, to give input, to sit at the table on these days, however you want to. And also, like, if you know things need to change or hey, we're missing in this area and we've seen it, we don't go 5 or 6 years out until we have to adopt more curriculum. We are actively looking at it and monitoring it. And again, part of this too goes to supporting our staff, right? As a new teacher, we are gonna hire new teachers, we do every year, to come in and say, hey, here's your roadmap. Larissa's exactly right. Cool, now I know where, now I can focus on how do I get all those kids engaged, or how do I differentiate for this kid who came in knowing everything about US history and now I need to, you know, continue to thrive. So these are the courses that they selected for this year. There have been some really unintentional wins too by having them in the same room. Like our social studies people share the DBQs down to the middle school, and the middle schools were like, oh, we can write smaller DBQs. What does DBQ stand for?
Document-based question.
Thank you so much. Writing prompt they do at the high school that the middle schools can do a smaller version of to prepare the kids to be able to have that skill, or at least the first time they see a DBQ in the high school, sometimes it's like, and so they're gonna do some of that. So there's been some nice vertical alignment. I know math in particular, they're updating all the forward-facing documents for the public, the scope and sequence, and they found that it was new that there was versions of help documents translated in Spanish for parents. And so they were like, oh, well, let's link all these onto the website too. So if a parent was going and wanting to help their kid, they can see worked out examples in Spanish. It doesn't have everything, but it's one more layer of things that are new that we're ensuring that's out there for transparency.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure how teachers would feel about being asked to come out of the room 3 days to do this. And everyone that I have talked to has said that was so worthwhile to do that. And I spoke to one of our new freshmen, US history teachers, and he said, we actually now have essential questions for US history. We didn't have those before. So they find a lot of value in it. And I think that's really important too, because then the 7th grade teachers have said to me, oh, we can't wait until next year. So that's good.
Yeah, this is awesome. Like it just for something that's never been there before, and to be able to have, those teachers that are all teaching the same together. It's something we hear, professional development days are great, but they're very planned, and you don't always get that opportunity to share with your peers, so to speak. And so this just sounds like what a great way to, and not someone really telling you, okay, you need to do this, but more so like, what are we doing? And this is what we need to do. And here we can do it together and have that baseline. I think it's just really, really great. So yeah, thank you for sharing. This is good to know. So thank you for being here too, Marissa.
It'll be interesting to see if it makes an impact in the math classes, particularly when kids hit algebra. Because algebra so often is a wall in math. And if we could get over that wall, that would be wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And if this helps, that's cool.
Yeah, can make a difference sometimes on how someone teaches and how they relate to, yeah, definitely, so.
A different approach.
Yeah, good. Well, excellent.
So we have the last thing we wanted to highlight in our curricular is we have a instructional day coming up here in January. That's sort of new for us to have school on Martin Luther King Day. We've primarily in the past been off. We have a half day of school on that day. Now, the one thing that's different a little bit from Indigenous Peoples Day, which we had in October, is we've always had lessons about Martin Luther King, his legacy, that has been part of our history standards, but we are at K-12 making an effort on this day in particular to expose all of our students to some type of learning around him. So I'll let Dan start with the elementary. Or Brittany?
Yeah.
Okay.
So all of our elementary MLK lessons and materials were developed once again by our elementary district level social studies team, which is comprised of Sam Walter, who is our curriculum specialist, and then we have 3 content leaders, Liz Berger, Michelle Charland, and Beth Myers. And they received support once again from Allison Sullivan, who's our secondary social studies curriculum specialist, Steffi Light, who is our elementary library coordinator, and then Summer Baldwin also joined as our TCAPS Indigenous Education Coordinator. And so this day will follow a very similar structure to that of the Indigenous Peoples Day, where teachers will be provided all the lesson plans with all the resources and materials to just ensure consistency in student learning, particularly surrounding the theme of MLK is a real person who stood for equality. And so you'll see on the slide, all students in grades junior kindergarten through 2nd grade will read the book Be a King, and they'll participate in a connected activity to that text. And then all students in grades 3 through 5 will read Martin's Big Words. And the 3rd through 5th grader students will also be completing the same connected activity related back to that text as well.
And then for our secondary, all of our secondary lessons were led up by our social studies department, who did spend half of their day on that RSDD day in November, receiving some PD on MLK experiences, ways to engage kids in lessons. They spent about 90 minutes. They had Allie had brought in some outside resources for them. They've already, like I had said, they've already been teaching a lot of his work and legacy, and so it was a little bit of a revamp on that, and then they developed lessons to roll out at all of our secondaries. This is an example of the slide for our high schools presentation there that won the life and the legacy of Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. And some facts there, but they've got some videos, they've got, again, some activities. At the middle schools, they really worked hard with their instructional coaches that they have there to develop lessons for all 4 of their core areas. Very similar, again, to Indigenous Peoples' Day there too.
I think this is a technicality, an academic technicality. The Dr. Reverend, it should be Reverend Doctor, because he got the Reverend first.
Okay, did not know
That I heard that
Yeah.
there's a guy who's a rabbi, and he was in the English House of Commons, and so he said rabbi always precedes what my title is, because it came second. So,
Okay, I will let them know, thanks. Any questions about lessons?
No, I think it's great that kids will have a half day of school and we'll focus on that versus a day off and not really understanding on this level. I think it's great. I'm sure I'll hear from my own children about having to go for a half day of school, but it'll be good.
Coming from the community that's worked on a lot of these things a couple years ago and working with Marshall Collins and E3, this is something that was very widely supported by members of our Black and Indigenous communities. Instead of having the day off, actually treating this as an instructional day. So thank you for taking the conversations and the cue from the community for that.
Mm-hmm. And I love the idea too of not only a half day of school and learning, but then the other half of the day is supposed to be dedicated to giving back in a way. I think that was a lot of a community push too, and I love that idea too of focusing on what Martin Luther King stood for and those things. So yeah. So
I strongly believe that if you have a holiday, it's a good thing to know why you have the holiday. And I think we've kind of ignored that. And I've actually been talking to Dr. Van Wagner a few times about name the holiday if it's something you're off from school. So I would extend it even to Memorial Day or Labor Day. Name the holiday and let the kids know why that's a holiday.
That's an important part, and that is something that I reviewed the social studies secondary lessons. That is one of the main things they're stressing at the high school level. And they did that with the Indigenous People Day too. It was understanding, like, here's what this actually is. Here's why it is considered a national holiday.
And it will branch out from there, so God willing, people will care about Rosa Parks, and they'll care about some of the full movement. The children that were involved when they first were opening up those schools, I think, because those kids were brave kids.
yeah, absolutely. Well, good. Thank you for the updates. I really appreciate that. Okay, we'll go on to celebrations and successes.
Just a lot to highlight here, so it was hard for us Dan and I to keep this short. I wanted to draw just a little focus to our Model UN teams. Both of our high schools have the Model United Nations as a club. They do earn they have the opportunity to earn some academic credit for participation in that as well. But just a really cool opportunity. Kids at work as a team, they take on a country, they go to these competitions. They really are modeled after the United Nations. And so an optional way for our kids to be engaged that's a little bit different than what you might see in the front of the sports section. But we've got kids at both sides of town engaged in that and our teachers leading that.
And as we know, we had several snow days before break, and some of our elementary principals still send out communications to students and families in hopes that we can do some kind of challenges to have some learning happening. So this is an example. Mr. Schwiegel's at Eastern did some things with some upcycled goods to make some crafts at home.
I hope whoever this is on the end didn't touch their elf because
The violation.
serious consequences. Hoping spatulas were used or something, not cooking. What do they
That's
call
not
it?
actually a snow day picture. She was suspended.
These are our middle school robotics teams, but our robotics teams are starting to get into their season. I know we're getting close to finishing our innovation and manufacturing centers for those at the high schools, but these are two of our middle school teams, West Middle School, who were participating in some competitions there.
Central Grade School had its annual toy drive with the Traverse City Fire Department. 20 large bags of toys and gifts were given out to benefit our local families. So always a great event at Central Grade that my fifth grader participated in and always reports back home that nice feeling of giving and the holiday spirit there.
And I want a toy just like the one I saw.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is something that our middle schools have done for years and years. And, you know, just to be transparent, I was George Washington when I was in middle school, but they reenact parts of the Constitution days, and it really was. Isn't that exciting? So this is some photos of our students doing
Can we get
that.
some pictures of that?
That's my mom. But it's a gay day that the kids, you see, they get dressed up for. They really get engaged for that. Similar to that mock congress that our high schools do in the spring through that. It's a cool way to bring that history to life and to do something unique and different with our kids. So.
It would be cool to even get that in the paper at some point or get it on the news.
Yeah,
I
some
think
of those.
people would
Yeah.
enjoy that.
And just want to highlight Danny Gorley. Danny is a one-on-one special ed assistant over at Long Lake. And Danny goes above and beyond. She works with a student who has some pretty complex needs. And she was able to take and make sure that the student was able to do activities just like every other student in the classroom. And she just has gone above and beyond in her role. So I just want to highlight her.
And this is our English language learners family potluck. This is a yearly event. Shout out to Emily and Kelly for all their organization around this event. So the families come in, bring a dish to pass. Then we also have some information out about our SSN, our LEAP activities and other activities that are available through TCAPS. Interpreters are there, our EL teachers are there, some elementary principals also come. So just a good opportunity to have families in the building and kind of open up those lines of communication.
And this, I know was in the local media too, but is really cool. So West Senior High was able to host the first ever girls wrestling tournament, which is just that sport's grown a lot, and we've seen more females get engaged in that. So just another opportunity we've provided for our students. That's cool.
And out at Cortade, they had their computer science week and so computer science week is now kind of how that hour of code was renamed. I think we're more familiar with the hour of code title on this. Specifically, Ben Boyce, Tracy Partman for leading that charge there at Cortade, and 100% participation for all of their students at Cortade for their science computer week.
So many amazing music performances all throughout the month of December. I know I was sort of joking with our friend Larry in the booth over there as to all the nights of taping and live streaming, thanks to him and Patrick West for all of their work on that, and for our directors and our students. I hope you guys got to some concerts. They just always continually impress us. So congratulations to the music department. It's just a great month of celebration. And then the last one we have here, just to let you know, so at Central, one of the things they do to help enhance the EDPs, the educational plans for our students, is all of our 11th graders have the opportunity to go visit a local business of their interest And they have worked, it's really Brian Gwinney, the assistant principal there, who's organized that with Michigan Works as to what are the local companies in the area that wanna host kids, how do we bus and move them? We can't move all of our 11th graders at once, and so he sort of does it over a few days. But this is some photos of that, and I think he's nearly close to all of the 11th graders getting out on their visits. West does something similar. They do more of a career fair day where the companies come in and do some presentations to students there. But again, exposing our kids to like other, opportunities for post-secondary and what that looks like, and connecting our local industry to our kids and what we're doing in our practice. So.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. Thanks for sharing all those good celebrations. So, all right, does anyone have anything else? No? Well, happy 2025, everybody. And so our next curriculum committee meeting will be Tuesday, January 28th. We may have a new makeup of the board. We'll see, or of the committee. We'll see what happens at our organizational meeting. And with that, I'll adjourn the meeting. So thanks, everybody. Good stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we'll change that 8:30.
It changes according to